Hi everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 16th, 2017. Welcome to history class. I'm making a recording today because I had a family emergency today and I have to miss class. I'm not sure when I'll be back today, so I didn't know if I would be here for class. So go ahead and watch the recording and follow the instructions for your assignment, and I should be back tomorrow. So today we're covering Unit 12, Lesson 3. This is Chapter 57. So just to start off, give yourself a little quiz here if you want to pause the recording to do this. Check out the pictures here and see how many of these presidents you can name. So go ahead and pause and give yourself a little quiz. And then come on back. All right, so if you were trying to guess, this is Herbert Hoover, this is Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter. And we have not learned about all of them yet, but if you got those correct, give yourself a little round of applause. So remember yesterday I shared out the study guide with you. I want you to have that available, and please try to fill out the study guide for each lesson as we go through this unit and review it every night. So the more you review it, the better prepared you will be when we get to our test. If you don't have the study guide, it is in the online school in the module under Unit 12. Right at the beginning of Unit 12, you should be able to open that up and save it to your computer. So today we're going to talk about what impeachment is according to our Constitution, and we're going to talk about how the press played a role in exposing the Watergate scandal. And we did a little summary of Watergate yesterday in class. If you were not with us yesterday in class, you do need to complete that assignment. It is 12.01. It is in the online school module. It is an article to read and a Google form to complete, and it is a graded assignment for 12.01. So if you haven't finished it, please get that done. That assignment will be closed at the end of the school day Wednesday. So some people refer to the press as the fourth branch of the government. And when we talk about press, we're talking about the media. We're talking about newspapers, magazines, television news, and people who report on what is going on in the government. So think about this question. What does it mean when someone says the press is like a fourth branch of the government? And what about this question? What kind of real power does the press have in a democracy? Think about that. These are things I just want you to be thinking about as we go through this lesson. And how much does our democracy really need to have a free press? And finally, where does the power of the press come from? So if you want to pause the recording and maybe discuss these questions with your learning coach for a couple of minutes and see what their opinion is on this. Okay, we are going to discuss a little bit more about the Watergate scandal. You can read along with me as I read the text out loud. When Washington Post reporters delved into a story about a burglary at the office of the Democratic National Committee and the trial that followed, they unleashed information that would lead to a congressional investigation, a flood of confessions, and evidence that implicated President Nixon. What happened when Congress drew up articles of impeachment? And that's what we're going to talk about. So the Washington Post is a newspaper. Now we have to think back to the 1960s, and remember at that time there is no internet. So people got their information from the newspapers and from the television news. There was pretty much no other way to get information. So people who worked for newspapers were pretty important because they were responsible for giving all the information about the news to the public. So we're going to learn about these guys. This is Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. And they were two reporters that worked for this newspaper, the Washington Post, which is a pretty big newspaper. And they were just doing their job, investigating a lead they had about a burglary, and it turned into a huge national scandal. Okay, and we're going to find out a little bit about that. So just for a second, let's take a pause. Woodward and Bernstein were, see if you can remember, A, government officials who were checking up on the president's campaign, B, FBI agents who are investigating the Democratic National Campaign, or C, newspaper reporters who investigated a lead on a story and uncovered a national scandal. Well, I just told you a second ago they were newspaper reporters, so you should have said C. Give yourself some applause there. All right, so just follow along with me while I read. How does impeachment work? The Constitution includes a process called impeachment that allows Congress to bring to trial U.S. government officials accused of serious misconduct. To impeach someone means to charge him or her with a crime or some other misdeed. The founders included the impeachment process in the Constitution so the American people would have a way to remove officials who break the law or abuse the power in a serious way. Congress has the power to impeach presidents, vice presidents, cabinet officers, federal judges, or any other civilian U.S. official, except members of Congress. It's not easy to impeach someone, though. It is a long, complicated process. Okay, so what's the difference between impeachment and resignation? So to impeach means you are being removed from office due to misconduct, something that you did wrong. In a sense, you are being fired. If you resign, that means you give up your office or your position. That means you are quitting your job. So there's a difference between these two words. That's important to remember. So if you were President Nixon, and I know we haven't talked in a lot of detail about what the crime was. It was very, very complicated. But let's say you're caught doing something wrong and you're going to get impeached. Would you resign or would you wait and go through the process of impeachment? Think about that. What would you do? You could discuss this with your learning coach at home. There's really no right or wrong answer. It's just something to think about. So when Congress decided that they had caught President Nixon involved in this Watergate scandal, and they decided to begin the impeachment process, there are several steps that must be taken before a member of the government can be impeached or fired from their job. So we're going to go through those steps here. I'm just going to read them, and you can follow along as I read. Step number 1. Only the U.S. House of Representatives has the power to begin the impeachment process against a U.S. official. So first, House members must debate whether or not that official deserves to be charged with the crimes or serious misconduct. Okay, so what's important to remember here is only the House of Representatives can do this. And before they come up with the charges, they debate it. They talk it over and decide whether or not it's serious enough to proceed. Step number 2. After debate, the House votes on whether or not to bring charges. If a majority of the House members vote yes, then the official is said to be impeached. That is, the official has been accused of crimes or serious misconduct and now must stand trial. So what else is important to remember here is just because you're accused of a crime and the House says that you're impeached does not mean you're guilty. You still get a chance to have a fair trial. Okay, number 3, step 3. Next, the process moves to the U.S. Senate where the trial takes place. The Senate sits as the jury and hears the charges against the impeached official. During the trial, senators listened to evidence and arguments about whether the official should be found guilty of the charges. So it's just like any other criminal trial. Step 4. At the end of the trial, the senators vote on whether the evidence proves that the official is guilty of the charges. If 2/3 of the senators vote guilty, then the official is convicted. So this is really important because we need to remember 2/3 of all the senators have to agree that they are guilty. Okay, if they don't, then he is not convicted. And the last step is someone who is impeached and convicted doesn't go to jail or pay a fine. The punishment is they are removed from their job or their office. The Senate may also prohibit that person from ever again holding office in the U.S. government. He or she may also be tried in a regular court of law. If convicted there, the punishment could involve a fine or jail time. So it depends on what they're being accused of, whether or not it would go to a regular trial. But mostly what happens is these people just lose their job, they're kicked out of the government, and they can never work in government again. Okay, so what do you think? True or false? Impeaching a U.S. government official is a quick and easy process. If you said false, then you were correct. It is not easy. It is not quick. It's a very long and difficult process. So on August 8th, 1974, Nixon becomes the first president to resign, and Vice President Gerald Ford becomes the president. So he gets impeached by Congress, but instead of going through the trial, he decides that he is just going to quit or resign the presidency. So he leaves office voluntarily, and of course the vice president takes his place, and that is Gerald Ford. Quick check. Richard Nixon was the first president to resign from office. True or false? That is also true. So think back to this story. We read about it yesterday, and I told you a little bit about it at the beginning of this class. What role did the press have in this scandal? And would this have happened without the press? What do you think? Discuss that for a moment with your learning coach. Okay, so I have a video for you to watch, and this is kind of a fun little representation about whether or not you thought he was a good president or a bad president, because despite the scandal he was involved in, he did a lot of good things. So if you're watching this in Edpuzzle, the link should pop up in the question box, and then you can just type an X in there to make it go away when you're ready to move on. If you're watching it on YouTube, you'll need to go to the module in your online school and open up the lesson slide file that's in there. It's at the top of lesson 12.03, and you can get the link for the video there. So you can pause the recording and watch the video. Okay, so despite what you think about Nixon, we have learned a little bit about what was going on with him and Watergate today. So for your homework tonight, just make sure that you have read chapter 56 and 57. You do have a graded assignment that's in your online school module 12.03 that needs to be completed. That is going to be graded and should be completed before Thursday. And don't forget, you should be working on your civil rights project. If you have questions about this, come see me during office hours. I'm there every day at 3 o'clock. It's on your schedule. And finally, your Unit 11 test closes Thursday, this coming Thursday at 4 p.m. Make sure if you have not finished that you get this done right away. All right, so that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, send me an email. I should be back tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day.